Massad Ayoob is probably the predominant self-defense expert in the country. He's been testifying in trials for 40, 50 years now. And his take on the Kyle Rittenhouse trial is one of the best I've seen. He looks at it calmly, rationally, and logically. And one thing I have noticed that those people who have looked at the evidence very hard, who have watched the videos, who have taken an active interest in knowing all the ins and outs of the Kenosha shootings, typically end up on the pro-Kyle side. Okay, so Real American has done all those things, and he's still anti-Kyle, but I just blame that on genetics. I'm just joking, Real American. Ha ha. Just kidding. At any rate, we're going to listen to Massad Ayoob talk about Kyle Rittenhouse. And I don't agree with everything he says in here, although I don't have any strong disagreements with any of it. But I will be interjecting my commentary from time to time. Hello out there. I am trying to get through.
With his powerful brainwaves cradled in the warmth of reasoning, it's time for Johnny Walker Dread to straighten you out on a thing or two. Emanating all the way from exciting Las Vegas, Oklahoma, it's the Johnny Walker Dread Show.
Hey gang, welcome to the Wilson Combat Channel, or welcome back as the case may be. We're at the Circle WC Ranch, Bill Wilson's place in Texas. My name is Massad Ayoob. I'm one of the regular presenters here. And because I still work a good bit in the criminal justice system, I've been asked to comment on what some of our viewers and commentators have asked for comments on, the outcome of the Kyle Rittenhouse case in Kenosha, Wisconsin. You'll recall that Kyle was the then 17-year-old kid who went up to Kenosha about 20, 30 minutes from his home in Illinois to assist in the cleanup efforts and the security efforts in the rioting there that followed the shooting of Jacob Blake.
Now, that's not quite accurate. When Kyle went to Kenosha, he didn't know he was going to be involved in any security efforts.
Now, if you look back, the rioting itself was totally unjustified. Jacob Blake, clearly in the iPhone videos that triggered all the controversy, was holding a knife the entire time police chased him and tried to keep him from getting into a car that was not his and driving off with two children he had no right to drive off in. That knife was in his hand when the police officer shot him 7 times.
That's a very nice, calm way of describing exactly what happened with the Jeff Blake shooting. And you listen to that and you think, yeah, that makes total sense as to why the officer felt the need to shoot him. Of course. Again, if you can get away from the hysterics and just look at these events in a calm, logical fashion, you can get to the truth a lot easier.
That knife was in his hand when the police officer shot him 7 times. The officer was in close proximity and in great danger of being stabbed. What should have been a headline, "Black Children Rescued from Knife-Wielding Kidnapper," became cross-racial, racially motivated shooting of a man shot 7 times in the back while he was unarmed.
What a great point. Here is a black man. He's getting into a car filled with black children. He doesn't own the car. It's not his. He's stealing it for all practical purposes, and he's armed. And yet nobody picked up on the fact that the police officer was in effect stopping those kids from being kidnapped.
The city erupted into flames. Kyle Rittenhouse, who was carrying an AR-15 rifle exposed in the streets, wound up shooting 3 men, shooting at a 4th, and killing 2 of the men that he shot. He was charged with murder and the multiple lesser-included offenses. There are still people asking why he was acquitted. Well, let's go back and look. And anyone who really wants to know, if you follow that trial, which was archived on Court TV, and see what the jury saw, you'll understand why he was acquitted.
Excellent point. In other words, if you inform yourself of exactly what happened, push aside all the political commentary and just look at the videos and all that, you will come to the conclusion as to why Kyle was acquitted.
They said, 17-year-old kid in the streets with a rifle. It's illegal, right in and of itself. Therefore, everything he did was wrong. Andrew Branca, the commentator and attorney at lawofselfdefense.com, was the first to point out that a strict reading of the minutiae of Wisconsin law said the kid, under the circumstances, was legal, and the judge agreed.
Yeah, that's a little bit debatable. I think that the judge has sided with Kyle on that one. However, an appeal could have changed things. I mean, the law was rather sloppily written. It could be interpreted in a couple of different ways. But whatever the case, Kyle won out, and I'm going to leave it like that.
If you're legal, you're okay. Now, was it smart to walk around in the streets with an AR-15 to go where you know there's trouble? No, of course not. But
well, I don't know. I mean, if there is trouble, I want to be armed. So why wouldn't I carry a rifle with me? But again, we're looking at this thing from two different sides. He's answering the question as to why would a person walk into the crowd? I'm answering it as to if you're going to walk into that crowd, would you be carrying a rifle? In my opinion, sure.
a lot of people on our side in the gun world said, boy, the kid went someplace that it was stupid to go. It's all his fault. I can't say it's all his fault. It was the nature of the circumstances. The police officers who were there themselves testified more of the people in the streets that riot-torn night were armed than were not. It was a classic example of what's called in Wisconsin doctrine of necessity. You're allowed to break the law or to break convention in a situation where following the law would cause more human injury than breaking it. When everyone else is armed, and many of them are hostile to you, who's trying to clean things up, being armed might turn out to be a good idea.
But this also supposes that his being armed was illegal. It was not.
The kid had paid for a friend of his who was 18 to buy the rifle with the plan that when he himself, Rittenhouse, turned 18, he would take possession of it. And properly done through an FFL dealer, that would have been totally legal. It was not a straw man purchase per se. And that's why Rittenhouse was clear on that.
He's off a little bit here. Kyle Rittenhouse was not charged by the state because even if that had been a straw purchase, it still would not have been illegal. Now, it would have violated federal law, but not state law. The feds could come in at some future time and decide to go ahead and charge him. I doubt they will. The feds have better things to do than waste their time on a hopeless cause. But whatever the case, the feds haven't decided anything yet here. The state has pretty much decided not to charge him for a straw purchase because the purchase was perfectly legal. The fact is that Kyle's possession of the rifle was only a misdemeanor. Straw purchases are legal in Wisconsin unless the actual possession of the rifle is a felony. Therefore, it doesn't matter whether Dominic Black was buying the rifle for Kyle or not. It was still a perfectly legal purchase. Massad has missed that one.
Was it smart to walk around with a gun? The jury forgave him for it because of the nature of the circumstances, the exigent circumstance. Did he go out there looking to shoot people? No, video showed him cleaning up graffiti, which he had been doing before. But when he found himself literally in something close to a war zone, I, for one, can understand why he armed himself with the only gun that was available to him. Now, if you look at the sequential 4 shootings.
Now, let's talk about the gun. A lot of people say, why did he have to choose an AR-15? Well, he only had a few choices there. He can't arm himself with a pistol. That would have definitely been illegal and would have violated federal law. And so a pistol is completely out of the question. A bolt-action rifle wouldn't have stirred a lot of controversy, except a lot of people would have thought, why in the hell are you so stupid as to try to guard property with a bolt-action rifle? That's about the worst weapon you can use for that kind of action. The only other options really are a shotgun and an AR-15 rifle, and a shotgun would have probably instilled a lot more hatred than the AR-15 rifle. So no matter what he would have done there, people would have criticized him.
Each of them caught on video, and the video is really what saved the kid. The testimony of the medical examiner was that when he shot the first man, an extremely violent man, a convicted pedophile, who had just been released from a mental hold at the hospital because he had expressed suicidal intention. Bear in mind, suicide is undirected homicide, and that man's behavior and threats that night clearly showed the man was homicidal. The evidence showed he was grabbing Rittenhouse's gun, clearly not with benevolent intent, when he was shot. And that.
Now, I don't think that Rosenbaum was necessarily suicidal that night, but he clearly didn't care if somebody shot him to death.
That is what cleared him on that count of murder. The kid ran, people followed him. They were screaming, get him, get him. There were even people screaming, shoot him. Now, bear in mind, one of the rioters had fired a gunshot moments before Rittenhouse first opened fire on the man trying to disarm him. As he flees, he's struck in the head with a skateboard. If you look at a skateboard, the sectional density of that hard, heavy wood with metal attachments, it's like being hit in the head with an axe handle, but a magnum version. He's stunned. He goes down. Another man does a flying kick at him. He fires 2 shots at that man, misses. The man keeps going, and Rittenhouse ceases fire. The man who is coming at him with a skateboard, he shoots in the chest, and that wound is mortal. The man staggers away.
Those of you who think that a skateboard can't be considered lethal, well, I'll tell you what. You just stand there in the middle of the room, and I'll nail you in the back of the head with the skateboard. Oh, wait a minute. You don't want to do that? Gee, maybe even you see the problem.
The last man who's going to be shot runs up to him with a loaded, chambered Glock 27/40 caliber in his hand. And if you look at the video, is literally bringing it down to point at Rittenhouse's head. When Rittenhouse fires the shot, that explodes the bicep. But as that man testified, vaporized my bicep. He turns and runs away screaming for a medic. Rittenhouse tries to run toward the police. You see on the video his hands are raised. The police tell him, get out of the street. He leaves and later turns himself in.
And the other thing I really hated about this trial was that everybody commented on the fact that the police just let Kyle go through. Okay, fine. But it was almost like they were blaming Kyle for that. It was really strange. It's not Kyle's fault that the police didn't take him into custody. He certainly tried to turn himself in.
And that totality of the circumstances is what got him past the usual guilt-inducing element of flight equals guilt. I thought his attorneys did an excellent job of breaking that case down, of breaking down the witnesses against him, and of explaining step by step, shot by shot, that every time that kid pulled the trigger, he was justified.
Oddly enough, I don't agree with the fact that Sheriffisi or Sheriffisi, or however you pronounce it, didn't insist that the fact that Kyle fled from his first attacker be included in the jury instructions. I don't get that. It makes no sense to me. Also, I think they were kind of caught sleeping during some of the examinations, but whatever the case, they were good enough and can't argue against the scoreboard.
It's very important that each time he ceased fire as soon as the threat against him had ceased, as soon as the first man grabbing the gun fell. When the man who tried to kick him in the head ran and kept going, the kid ceased fire. When he fired the single shot at the skateboard guy and that man turned and staggered away, Rittenhouse ceased fire. When he shot the man pointing the pistol at him and that man turned and ran, he ceased fire. And one important lesson from this is knowing when to stop shooting is every bit as critical as knowing when to start. We saw a whole lot of BS in that trial as far as the guns, something we've seen for years, the demonization of the AR-15 rifle and the corollary demonization of the person who owns it. And we have another YouTube video on archive that explains the rationale and detail of the use of the AR-15 in self-defense, and I would refer you to that.
Okay, just a few points on this. The AR-15, is it a hunting rifle? Yes, you can use the AR-15 for hunting. It's not a particularly good big game rifle, but when it comes to shooting the smaller game and stuff, oh yeah, it's very effective. It's quite accurate. Don't believe this nonsense that it's not. It is quite accurate. And it's light, easy to carry. It's not a bad hunting rifle. The other thing about it was people are saying, well, this would be useless in a militia when you're going up against real rifles. No, the AR-15 is quite capable in battle. It's for all practical purposes an M16, but semi-automatic. And yeah, the M16 is nothing to sneeze at. So the AR-15 rifle has been bandied around by a lot of people who don't understand it, who don't get it. It's a very good rifle, very good platform. And of course, the quality depends on who's making it. Don't listen to that nonsense. If I'm going to be sent off to fight an urban battle in the streets, in buildings and stuff like that, the AR-15 rifle would probably be my top choice.
You saw the attorney pick up the AR-15 in court, swing it around, and point it at everyone. I've seen that before. It's a cheap shyster trick. The prosecutor or plaintiff's lawyer will always do that, pretending to be the defendant. So he's trying to psychologically terrorize the jury while he is in the role of the defendant. It didn't work there, thank goodness, and generally doesn't work.
Yeah, I don't know why the judges allow this. I would have just told Binger, look, leave the gun alone. The jury should be able to come to a conclusion based on the evidence in front of them. You don't need to be doing that crap. So those people out there who say that, well, the judge wouldn't let Binger get away with things. No, I mean, the judge allowed Binger a lot of latitude in many ways, and that was one of them. I wouldn't have allowed it. I would have said, no, you need to keep the rifle away. We all know what a rifle looks like.
But it's something for you to watch out for. They accused him, because he had full metal jacket ammunition in the rifle, of reckless, wanton disregard for human life, because such bullets could go through and through anyone he shot and endanger other bystanders. Well, it turns out none of them did. No harm, no foul, and that was not lost on the jury. The kid's answer should have been, when asked, why did you have that ammunition? It was the only ammunition available to him, just as that AR-15 was the only firearm available to him when he found himself in something that was certainly no longer a gun-free zone.
Well, actually, he's a little wrong there when he says, well, that's the only ammunition available to him. Dominic could have clearly purchased a different kind of ammunition if he had wanted. Kyle actually answered this beautifully. I mean, it was probably one of the top performances I've seen by a defendant when he stopped Binger and just said, I really don't know much about ammunition. And you could almost hear the jury go, oh, he's like us. We don't know all this stuff either. And therefore, any kind of attempt to paint him as the devil because he fiendishly went to a gun store and said, I need the round that will cause maximum pain, that will cause maximum carnage, went by the wayside. This is just a kid who used whatever ammunition his friend bought for him. So I thought that Kyle handled that absolutely perfectly.
One of the few things the kid did wrong. He had some first aid training. He was carrying a first aid kit, and he did, in fact, apply some first aid to some of the rioters who had been injured that night. He did not, however, have his EMT certificate, emergency medical technician. At some point that night, he had told someone that he did, probably just to reassure them and give them more confidence that he was competent to treat them. Actually,
he told Ryan Balch that he was an EMT, and he did that, I think, to prevent Ryan from taking his gun from him, saying, hey, man, you don't need to be carrying that. You don't need to be carrying, we don't need you around here. I mean, Kyle's out there with his friends. He doesn't want to go home, and he can't go home. He's riding with Dominic. So if Ryan does that, Kyle has no other option but to just stand around with his thumb up his ass while his friends do all of the exciting guarding the property stuff. And he doesn't want to do that. He's 17. Who at 17 would want to just have to just stand around while your friends did all the exciting stuff? So Kyle lied to Balch about his EMT training just to make sure that Ryan didn't get all over him. I would have done the same thing, to be honest with you. And don't give me this crap about how you never lied when you were a kid. Most of you probably even went and got beer with a fake ID. So I don't want to hear any crap about you never lying to somebody about your age or your credentials. Give me a break.
He handled that wisely, and he admitted to that falsehood in court. Never try to make things look better than they are. When you admit, yeah, I did this one thing wrong, the jury is thinking, okay, he said something that hurt himself. He admitted that even though it hurt him. That tells me I can believe him about the other things that helped him. So the kid handled that part right.
Agreed. He was coached well by his defense about what to do there. If you want to see the antithesis of that, check out Gage Grosskreuz's behavior and Theodore Edgecombe.
Could he have gone at all? It's like saying, well, someone volunteered to rush into a burning building to rescue someone and got burned. Was it foolish to do that knowing they might have been killed? Well, one man's foolishness is another man's courage and commitment. And I leave that to your personal ethics and morality to look at. In the end, would it have been wiser for him to stay away? Absolutely. And I'll close this with a point that I always seem to make. We quote great masters of tactics like Jeff Cooper and others here. I'm going to quote a poet and humorist from the old days, Ogden Nash. He said, when called by a panther, don't answer. And hopefully a lot of people will learn from Rittenhouse's ordeal that it might be the wisest thing to stay away from such conflagrations as much as you think it's righteous to go in and help.
Well, righteous is not really the word I would use. I think that Kyle has a strong community sense. He felt that the adults were not doing anything, and by golly, somebody has to. And so he volunteered himself. You know, oddly enough, the same people that are claiming that Kyle should have never gone in there, should have stayed at home, are applauding Americans for going to the Ukraine to fight the Russians. I don't have any problem with the Americans going to the Ukraine, but you see the hypocrisy there. I mean, Kyle only traveled about 20, 30 miles, and he has strong Kenosha ties, and they criticize the hell out of him, telling him basically, it's none of your business, stay out. But when it comes to the Ukraine, they plot all Americans flooding over there, flooding, a little strong, going over there to help fight the Russians. How does that work? Well, I'll tell you how it works. It's politics. If Kyle had been black and this had been a patriot riot, they would have applauded him as one of these volunteers. Isn't it great that a person from another community decides to go there and help out? You see, you can even help even another community. That's because we're all one big community. They would have been all over that. And so all of you people out there who think that Kyle had no business being in Kenosha, you're hypocrites, you're liars, and frankly, I think you're evil.
I'd like to thank you for watching, and I'd like to invite your comments. All of us learn from each other. There's a commentary section at the end of every Wilson Combat video, and I hope you'll share your thoughts there.